Hi everyone, this is Kelly from The Truth and Story, and I'm here to do a look at the newest version of the Ancestral Path Tarot by Julie, is it Cusia? Or Watts, perhaps? I might be slaughtering that. This is, I believe, the third printing of the deck. There was I want to say early 90s printing, and then roughly 2012. This is not, these are not set numbers, but it was re-released quite briefly, I believe, by US Games. It was sold out pretty quickly. And then this is the newest iteration of the deck. Now, I'm going to put a link in the description box to a comparison of the original versus this new one that I watched, a video that I watched on that. And so I'm going to put the link to that below. I do not have the original, and it is interesting to see the difference between the two of them. The original was very small, lots of border action going on, so that made the images quite small. And there are quite a lot of color changes. I think that one of the ways in which the artist was willing to redo this with US Games is that they be able to reshoot. They didn't have any, they just had, I can't remember what files that US Games have, but they didn't have, this is again back, very different to what original files from the late 80s and early 90s versus what a modern camera is able to take a picture of the original paintings that she still had. So all of the artwork was re-photographed, and some of the backgrounds were changed a little bit as well, which is interesting to see also. So if you're interested in this deck, or just like to watch those kinds of things, again, check down in the description and you can see she does a side-by-side comparison of the decks. I had heard of this deck before. I remember hearing it. I remember that people had recommended it to me or thought it would be something that I would like, but I knew that it was out of print, so it just really, I never dove deep into looking at the images, other than that I liked the way that it looked like it was going to be, the way that it was set up, in terms of the different cultures and things of that nature. But I didn't look closely at it because it was a deck that was out of print. And I know recently some people have said something to me about the Ancestral Path. I don't think I made a connection between the two of them. I don't know. I think it was just going over my head, because I do know some people had said, oh, have you looked at the Ancestral Path? And it just didn't connect the dots to me that this was a re-release of this deck. Until my friend Patrick was like, oh, we have to have this Ancestral Path. And then I watched the video that's linked below, and I was like, oh, wow. So this is where we stand today. And yes, I know we are now whatever minutes in, and we haven't even opened the box. The one thing I was kind of surprised and disappointed with, that it is just a tuck box. US Games has been doing really fantastic decks and deck boxes, so I'm not entirely sure why this one was done with a tuck box, but it is a tuck box, and it has the world card on the back of it. Mine has a couple little dings because it's a tuck box and it was in a bubble envelope. That's going to happen, but it's nothing that is massive at all. Just really that corner is probably the worst of it. I have taken the cellophane off, but that's all I've done. So I will say the tuck box is quite sturdy. Like, it feels quite sturdy for a tuck box, but it's still a tuck box. And it's just kind of surprising, because I do feel like they have really stepped up their game with their boxes of late. Now, I wanted to grab, as you can see, this is a humongous deck, but I wanted to grab something to compare the cardstock to this. One second. So this is a more recent US Games deck as well. This is a Crow Tarot. Again, nice little box. I really wish that they had done the same, but Now these are bigger cards too. I feel like this cardstock is thinner, but you know what? I don't think it is. I really do think it's just because of the size of the cards. It actually feels very similar. And I really like this cardstock, but when I was taking the cellophane off of this one, I thought, oh, you know, that's just kind of, you know, okay. While I was up, I should have grabbed, here I've got all kinds of single cards over here. Let me grab something from here. Like here's a Santa Muerta, which is a Los Scarabeo card, but you can see these are really large cards. Let's think if I have anything. This is a Rockpool Publishing Oracle card. They're big cards, and they were very small, so I'm not, you know, I get wanting to go to big. I don't know if the big, shooting big was a bit of an overkill, because I have not even begun to try to shuffle this yet, but you know, this does have, I will say, and one of the things that Patrick was saying when he was like, oh, you know, we need to get this, it does have a feel of like Marielle or the Margaret Peterson, or even the Weaver's Oracle, where, you know, these are paintings that probably took quite some time to make. I believe that the creator, was learning, really sinking into learning tarot in the process of making the cards. And there is just something about those cards. Now, I have decks that I absolutely love and that are stunning art that, you know, maybe took a lot less time to do, but they're still amazing decks. So I'm not saying that that automatically makes a deck amazing, but I will say that there is a different energy about decks like that, in my experience. So let's dive in here. So big cards, looks like typical US Games cardstock, which I generally like. Just because it's larger, it does feel a little bit more flimsy. Here are the backs, which have also quite changed. These are the original backs I believe she wanted. US Games is doing their normal US Games copyright. It's not the artist's name, I don't believe. Nope, it's just US Games. You know how I feel about that, but it is what it is. The card's so large that it doesn't stand out. It kind of looks just like an extra line there from my bad eyesight, but it's still never my favorite thing. So we have an art card here, and then this card says, The Ancestral Path Tarot by Julie Cusia Watts threads together the diverse beliefs of various cultures in order to find commonalities of experience between them. It examines the traditions of our ancestors through mythology to reclaim a personal spirituality that enables us to perceive the divine in ourselves and others. The Ancestral Path Tarot emphasizes the living traditions of all human cultures for us to factor into our worldview. The deck portrays paths created by ancestors of different times and cultures for your consideration. So we have that there. It comes with a little guidebook, obviously something like this that says that it is kind of exploring the mythology of various cultures of various times. I would definitely have loved to have seen something larger. Now, it's possible that there is a larger book that can, you know, from the original version that can be purchased. But I like to, for these, you know, go with this is what we have, right, to work with. And so the Ancestral Path Tarot adheres to the fundamental structures of the tarot deck. Its major arcana sequence of 22 images bears the standard titles, with the exception that the Hanged Man is now the Hanged One. But an older ordering is used, and it puts justice and strength in the older positions, which I love. This version, now the first version did have numbers on them, on the majors. This version does not have numbers on the major arcana, so which other way you use strength and justice won't really matter in terms of usage. She uses swords, staves, cups, and sacred circles instead of pentacles. It says numbered cards are to be viewed from the 10 to the ace, reversing the typical hierarchical structure. Court cards are termed king, queen, knight, and princess for the sake of convenience, as the divine and legendary figures of the Ancestral Path Tarot do not easily adapt to static titles. So it's more convenience-wise. The 4 suits depict representative cultures of 4 racial groups: Japanese swords, Egyptian staves, British cups, and Native American sacred circles. Each culture is portrayed during a distinct historical epoch: the Japanese feudal era, the Egyptian 19th dynasty of Ramses II, Arthurian Britain, and post-contact America. Central myths or legends of these racial groups serve as a backdrop to each suit and trace paths our ancestors forged in shaping their worldview. So it talks about how in the sword suit, a woman's epic song details the Anu prince people's relationship with their bear god and defines relationships between men and women, clan and tribes, and Anu and Japanese cultures. The Osirian myth cycle of death and resurrection weaves through the staves. A chapter from the Egyptian Book of the Dead entitled Triumph Over Darkness speaks eloquently of life and death, light and shadow, and gods and humans. The Arthurian Grail mythos sets the stage for the cup suit. Morgana's Reverie synthesizes the story of the cups as the sister of King Arthur prepares herself for the role of psychopomp on the path to the king's initiation into the knowledge of his genetic inheritance and his spiritual responsibilities. I know I'm reading a lot, but I think it's important to get a grasp of what she's doing here. In the suit of Sacred Circles, Menominee creation, legend of bear and thunder spirit ancestors, and a Winnebago holy medicine song support the tale of the vision quest. The court cards in these images are deified ancestral figures. So we have creator deities. So these are all deities in the different suit courts. The aces are the raw elemental power of each suit. Let's see, what does it say? What the majors? I think those stay a little bit more stepped outside of the myth, perhaps. And then we have, this for each. So it does name, so for example, with the King of Staves, we have Osiris. The Queen of Staves, we have Isis. The Prince, we have Horus. And the Princess, we have Nephthys. And so on and so forth. So we do have Arthur, Guinevere, Lancelot, and Morgana. And so we do know who each one of these court cards are, which is very helpful, at least to start to pull us into the myth. So we can at least see now what it is that she is doing here with the suits and having them in specific racial groups and specific time periods in those racial groups. So the time period isn't going to be all over the place. It's going to be, I think it feels from what I've seen to be much more cohesive. So, okay, so I think that's about it with the guidebook. There is a Celtic cross spread with the cards the size of these. Good luck making a Celtic cross without having a huge space. But I'm sure with the smaller version of it, that would have been easier. I did just Google it real quick, and it does look like there is an older book by Tracy Hoover called the Ancestral Path Tarot. But it looks like, even purchasing it used is quite expensive right now because obviously it has been out of print for some time. I don't know if this gives us the actual 1995, 2013, and 2019 for the print dates of the versions of this deck. Okay, so tuck box. It's a nice tuck box. It's a nice tuck box, but it's a tuck box. Cardstock, if you have like the Crow Tarot or any of the newer, and most, I don't know that they necessarily change. I like US Game cardstock. I'm a riffle shuffler. Again, it feels a little flimsier in this larger size, but I do really like the cardstock and it holds up well for me. some of the images, I will say, do feel a little bit dated, right? There is a bit of a feel of the late 80s, early 90s feel to the deck. It does feel like this is a deck that was painted in that time period, which makes sense because it was. But for the most part, I don't actually think it suffers too much from this because of the fact that it is you know, based in such specific time periods in different cultures. And so I think that that really saves it from that. And there's only a couple that kind of stood out to me that way. But we do have a tarot reader as the Fool starting this journey, has an image of the deck itself here, and it has her holding up her own card. So it's like the card within the card, right? And the backing of the card, it almost, that mirror here is in the back of the Fool card as well. So she's getting ready to go onto this journey. So you know, this isn't my favorite card only because I would have liked to have seen it stay in the style of the rest of the deck versus feeling very modern. So for the sake of like things, continuity, I personally would have preferred a Fool that went with that continuity. But I do like tarot readers to be in tarot cards. They're often in like the High Priestess, you'll see. I want to say one time at least I've seen them in the Wheel of Fortune. But generally you'll see them in the High Priestess. And I do like that idea there. But this person is getting ready to have a new experience. Is going to start flipping the cards and going down this path. Do like this very shamanic. He has a leopard skin. He has his staff of power. He definitely has all of the elements here. We can see the sacred circle or the drum here. We can see certainly a sword. We can see the cup. We can see a staff. We also have an extra sort of Egyptian rod of some type here as well. So it does feel very shamanic to me and very active energy here. The little white book doesn't give us a lot of context in this card to the image. It just talks about male active force, creativity, spontaneity, the art of persuasion. So it's more of a little paragraph of what the magician might mean. It doesn't seem to reference the actual art itself, which is something I do like to see in decks. But you know, again, there's a whole book out there at one point, whereas now we have this little white book here. I absolutely love this High Priestess. I think she is beautiful. I love the veil draping over the moon headdress. I love the 4 equal-sided cross. I love the scroll. We have the tree of life here, the Kabbalah tree of what life. Very Rider-Waite-Smith. We have the pomegranates in the back. We've got the 2 towers. The idea of the veils are very fully there, but it's absolutely beautiful. Then we have the Empress. I do love that she is outside, although she is a more, you know, she's on some stonework here, but she is outside. Waterfalls pouring down over to the side. We have the traditional shield and these types of things. I like her crown of stars as well. She does look like she could be pregnant. You could see her as being pregnant. I know not everybody likes that in Empresses. I do not mind that. I really like him, this Emperor here. I think he looks very Emperor-like. Very much the Lord and the Lady kind of feel to him. I love the antlers. He just looks very, very solidly seated in his power. Absolutely love this as the Hierophant. So, you know, it just and it doesn't go into this at all about you know, anything. It's just a spiritual leader or teacher. You know, it just gives you sort of an idea of the Hierophant. But, you know, I would assume that this is like the seer, at Delphi, or some sort of oracle, or seeress, and her like initiates or priestesses here. You know, you would certainly be somebody you would be going to, you feel like, with the columns, and you'd be going to get this oracle and gain some wisdom. And I quite love that, actually. I love the bright light in the background. I love that everything is growing towards them. You definitely have the Garden of Eden feel with the snake, and you have the 2 trees that are here. So it's very traditional in terms of what she notes in there. So, I mean, it works quite well as a lover's card. Here we have very Roman feeling chariot with the lions. I don't know that I've seen lions in the chariot card as much, but I quite like the lions there. I really love his cloak that is swirling out behind him. Definitely looks confident, definitely looks powerful. It looks a little less, it's still a pretty solid looking chariot. I do like my chariots to look really movement oriented, but this I think conforms well to traditional chariot cards without getting overly boxed looking like some of them can. I absolutely love this card. I mean, I just love this card. I feel like there's so much to unpack here, because you have, and it doesn't talk about this at all in the little guidebook, but you have, okay, here we have justice, right? We have the yin and the yang. We have, hello Libra, we have the Libra sign here. We have the black and the white pillars pulled in here. But look, we have the sword laying across her lap. We have the scales on the ground. We even have the books, like would be like the Old Testament commandment tablets on the ground, right? She's not using the scale. She's not using the tablets. She has almost like a snake or a tree that's wrapping around her, a vine. And the sword is just resting across her, and she has what looks to be 2 stones in her hand. And so she is relying on her own self to create that, to have that space of judgment and assessment, or not judgment, but you know what I mean, not judgment as in the judgment card, but that idea of fairness and equality is she's drawing from her own self. She's not making use of scales or tablets or men's laws. And I just think that there's just something really powerful there. I feel like there's a lot to unpack from that card. I absolutely love this Hermit card. He just looks like magic. I mean, again, it's got the Gandalf feel. I love the brightness of the star here. It doesn't need a lantern because he's got that star. The stuff of stardust and magic just coming from his hands. I just love him. I absolutely love this I was going to say this human, but I mean the Hermit, but I love him as a human as well. Here we have the Wheel of Fortune. Actually, I quite like this. I don't tend to love Wheel of Fortune cards. I love the standing stones. I love the astrological signs sweeping across. I love the movement and turning of the solar system in the background. I really do quite love this Wheel of Fortune. Oh, love this one too. Here we have Strength card. Again, Strength is at... I feel like in the original, Justice was 8 and Strength is at 11. This is how it's ordered. I haven't shuffled this, but there's no numbers on here. So you can obviously put those things at whatever position you want to put them in, because there aren't any numbers. And that's something I actually quite like. While I do like to have numbers in the Major Arcana cards, I do, in a modern sense, really enjoy that when they don't have them, because it does kind of free that up to be the way that you see those cards. Beautiful card. I love her smiling face. There's a sense of serenity and strength about both her and the lion that I think is very powerful. How interesting is this as the Hanged One? Again, something that I would love to see unpacked. But I quite love it, because this is this idea, in this little guidebook here, it's going more on that transitionary period, you know, that we need to kind of flip ourselves upside down and be in that sort of in-between liminal space so that we can get a new perspective. So I think that it's, you know, kind of surrendering to the transition, surrendering to waiting for when things are going to kick into gear, they're going to kick into gear, right? The baby here just simply has to wait for the course to just occur, to have things occur the way that they're going to happen. So I do like that tone, or that layer of really focusing on being that liminal space, or that transition space with the Hanged Man. I think that works beautifully. Here we have the Death. I quite love this Death card. Of course, it feels very like Avalon with the boat and the, I mean, there's lots of boat myths for death, but to me, you know, I'm thinking, oh my goodness, you know, they're going to take them out to Avalon, or are you going to cross the river? I love the boat with the hooded person there, and then the child playing with the skull, I think is really, we do have the sun coming up, a lot of darkness here, but then the sun rising on this new day over here. The child seems comfortable with death. This is part of the process of life, and I quite like that as well. So I really love that Death card. Beautiful Temperance card. Foot on land, foot in water, the mixing between the two shells. You know, you have, I think, what it is that you need for a Temperance card, and it's beautiful. Very interesting Devil card here, right? So we have two people that are chained. It appears to be female, male. We have more of a Caucasian and more of an African feel on it. So we have different races being chained. We have different genders being chained. And then we have this creepy face in the background. This talks about, you know, karmic ties. More enlightened look at the card can elicit ideas of release from bondage, throwing off shackles, overcoming insurmountable odds, releasing inner devils, right? But it is that whole, are we going to remain chained, right? How are we giving over our power for me? And this works fine as a devil for that. I do wish that their shackles were a little looser, right? Because I do enjoy traditional images of the devil where they can very clearly pull the shackles off around their neck, and that there is some degree of giving over our power in associations with the devil. So I would have liked that to have been a little more, but that's just personal preference, right? It is a very traditional devil, and it works as such. Here we have a very powerful tower. It looks obviously Egyptian with kind of a Sphinx feel here. We've got the lightning, we've got things crashing, we've got things burning. You know, it's a tower card. It's a tower card, and it's a very impactful feel to the tower. We have a beautiful star card. Oops. Put those over there. I mean, it's a very traditional star card. You know, we have, again, the land and the water. We have pouring onto the land and pouring into water. We have the beautiful, just pitch black sky with that North Star, so to speak. We do have some kind of pictographs. Let me see here. Like some of them, it looks to be like Leo. Oh yeah, they're Aries, Taurus. I'm trying to see if and there's Libra. Yeah, so we have the signs of the zodiac going up this which that's kind of interesting because this depiction is much more of a Polynesian, perhaps because I'm seeing that just because of it seems like I'm not being on an island by the water and that kind of thing. That's just kind of where I'm going with, but some sort of native or Polynesian, and you know, the astrological signs, you know, to me don't quite as much go with that, but it's a beautiful star and I quite love it. Here we have the moon. This is a really interesting moon because we look like we have like an old wise person. It could be a woman, it could be a man, but we have this look, what looks to me like a shaman or a wise woman or a wise man. You know, things can be complex in there are a lot of patterns that go along with the moon, and that kind of seeking knowledge and gaining wisdom from those. With this over here, that I really like that. I love how distinct the moon is reflecting in the water here. So I just think it's beautiful. Here we have a sun card without a naked baby in it. Thank you very much. Again, I know that they are traditional, but they're not my favorite. It just feels like the sun, right? It's like raw. It's got, you know, the steps going upward to this burst of sunlight. We definitely have those sort of beetles that we see in, you know, like Ra or Horus, or I'm not up on Egyptian mythologies. I'm very basic, but it's very clearly an Egyptian feel to it, but it's also very clearly a very powerful sun feel to it, and I quite love that. This is a beautiful judgment card here. Again, I think a lot to unpack. Right? For me, the judgment is about self-assessment. We need to stop and assess. How did we get to where we are? How did we contribute to that in good and negative ways? How did other people contribute in good and negative ways that you didn't have any, you know, control over? Just assess your situation before you can escape. And it's almost like she's underwater and floating. We have the bed repeating itself kind of endlessly over here. It's almost like she's going to be stuck unless she just meets herself head on. And that's going to be her way out. Otherwise, she's just going to keep repeating the same things over and over again. It's really powerful. And then we have the World card, which is stunning. Now, somebody I was watching, I almost want to say, I skimmed through a couple walkthroughs of these, so I don't want to say the wrong person, but somebody was stating that this is actually, I think, and I could be wrong, so this is just, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but I believe that this is a painting from one of the first images of Earth that we had, which I think is really cool if that is the case. But anyways, I quite like the cleanness, and it's just the world as the world, because it's talking about the ancestral path that's taking place on Earth, and so I quite like that. It works for me. And that brings us to the suits. Okay, next up we have the swords suit, clearly. And again, this is going to be, I should stick a sticky back here so that I can find it. But we have the, a woman's epic song details the Anu peoples, and I may not be saying that correctly, it's Japanese, people's relationship with their bear god, and defines relationships between men and women, clans and tribes, and then the cultures there. So Japanese, this is taking place during the feudal era. So there are actual mythological personages in the courts. So this is an Izanagi. He looks very, he's almost, you know, he's like in his element. He is perfectly using the sword in a perfect way. I like the all of the air that is above. I love the cutting through of emotion and just being really intellectually focused there with this King of Swords. This is beautiful. You know, I'm a Queen of Swords fan, and I mean, look at her. she's like smiling, because the Queen of Swords are not always not smiling. I do think it's interesting that the King and Queen do have such a heavy water presence here, but this is this idea of joy in your working with your mind. I don't know that these are all supposed to follow Rider-Waite-Smith or not. They're more to follow the story. This is Izanami. I'm definitely going to be looking up the, I know I know the Arthurian cycle very well. I do know the Egyptian cycle a little bit. This is not a mythological cycle that I know anything about, so I'm definitely going to be looking this up to see how that progresses. But just visually, I just think she's beautiful. And there is a sense of joy and compassion that shows up in her. Again, does feel a little bit Queen of Cups to me, but I think that we can have that in the Queen of Swords. Like, I think that she doesn't have to be so stern. Look at him. He is awesome. Sukiyami. Something along that lines for the Prince of Swords. Very movement based. I mean, he's awesome. Very powerful. And then the Princess, beautiful as Amaterasu. Again, I don't know the story, but they're beautiful and they fit. For me, court cards don't have to really portray much of anything, because for me, they're about how the energy of the reading is moving. And so I don't get stuck too much in what particular court cards look like, but they all flow together well, and I quite love them. They're beautiful. Very powerful Ten of Swords. Does feel Rider-Waite-Smith. There does look to be like a person there. Although I will say, when I first saw this, I didn't think there was a person. I was like, oh, there's just a bunch of swords on the ground. Pretty sure there is a person on the ground. There's his head right there. So, you know, traditional, but it's beautiful. I love all the different sword handles. This is really powerful, right? We have almost a Marseille configuration of the swords here, and you can see this sense of befuddlement, or just there's a lot going on in the head, a lot of things that are happening that need to be paid attention to with the Nine of Swords, which I think works really well. Here we have the Eight of Swords, being held captive by one's tradition. So we have this very traditional Japanese woman, and she's sort of being held back. But there is a way forward for her. So I think this works quite well as an Eight of Swords. I'll be interested again to know the story cycle a little bit more. Seven of Swords, the Thieves card, getting away with it. For me, this is like, okay, we don't know what's happening. Again, for me, the Seven of Swords is just about something's happening. He's taking these swords, but we don't know the whole story. We really have to dig a little bit deeper, because we just don't know what's happening, and that works for me. A beautiful Six of Swords. This is really beautiful because there isn't any movement really, yet we still get that sense of movement through the art, through this path here, and this following this path of this light into the horizon. The eye seems to do the movement more so than any movement in the card itself, and I think that is really beautiful. She also labels this as mental harmony, which I think is beautiful with the Six of Swords, because the six is the number of harmony and balance, and then we have the swords of the mind. Five of Swords, I thought was interesting, because this is about, she puts this more as about youth and idealism and learning taking place, and perhaps learning when, you know, in the midst of combat and these things that are going on, if you can learn from these disruptive energies, then that feels very intellectual based, like the swords are. I really quite like what she's doing there. Four of Swords, again, this time for a pause here. This does seem to be about going inward in the book anyways. There's something that's going on here, and she's just kind of stopping and pausing for a moment to really know what it is that she should do moving forward. Again, I know that there is more of a storyline here. It's not in the book, and it's something that I'll have to learn. But just as cards themselves, you know, can I use this imagery? I love this Three of Swords, right? Because for me, the three is about growth, and then the swords are about the mind. So there is this sense of loss that you can see, because this is somebody going off to battle. He's obviously leaving behind perhaps his mother and his wife, or his wife and his daughter. There is that sense of separation that's going to have to take place, but it still has a very feeling of movement and growth with the trees, which is how I tend to see the Three of Swords. Absolutely stunning Two of Swords. She's, there is this blockage here. We have the sky, we have the water. For me, that's so extra bonus for me, that idea of when we can bring our head and our heart together, that's when we can unblock and move forward. And then we have a very beautiful, clean, elemental Ace of Swords. I'm going to set this aside to see what the other aces look like. So that brings us to the staves, or the staves, the wand suit. And again, this is Egyptian in the Ramses II, I believe, the 19th dynasty of Ramses II. And the mythological people cycle that we have here is of Osiris. So, of course, the King of Staves is Osiris. I love the flames here. I love the lions here. He feels very regal for sure. Same thing with her. I mean, she's stunning, right? Like, she is the Queen of Staves here. She is very much at one. I actually quite like her. I think her eyes are closed, because her creative power comes from inward, which I think is beautiful. But she is so poised. And yet you know that she's just bursting with creative force here. So beautiful, stunning. Here we have Horus as the Prince of Staves. Inflamed passion, emotions, excitement. You don't see as much movement here as you saw with the Prince of Swords. But again, I think there's a banked energy in the three that we've seen so far that are powerful. Look how beautiful she is. And this is Nephthys. About gaining messages from the other side. This is such a beautiful Ten of Staves. It reminds me of the Victorian Romantic Tarot. Obviously, entirely different culture and thing, but the feel of this card is similar to that, and that's one of my favorite Ten of Wands, and so I absolutely love this. The Nine of Staves, physical manual labor. You got to kind of push through here. The Eight, very movement oriented, right? Gorgeous sense of movement shooting across, and with the birds themselves, it's gorgeous. This one feels a little bit out of place. I mean, it feels like we've kind of shifted eras a little bit. Kind of feels psychedelic, but they had rainbows and prisms, and they did all kinds of stuff like that in you think about like the tombs and stuff, where they would set those lights and stuff. So I'm not going to argue it. The Seven of Wands here, this is about, this person looks like she's just standing against whatever, all of this power. Like, she could be just completely dominated and overwhelmed, but she's standing for what she believes in. We definitely have that sense of the triumphant entry. Oops, let me turn off my phone. It's been very quiet for once. Very, very, very Six of Wands. Five of Wands. It's kind of weird. My brain's kind of like having to think, going the other direction. Now, this is so their fives tend to be different. I will definitely have to sit with their fives, because I love it when people do different things. But this is about, she writes about this being about discussion and planning and strategizing versus fighting. So they almost seem to be the opposite of what we should be, that we see in maybe the Rider-Waite-Smith, but what we should be doing. So I definitely want to sink into there. I'm going to put that to the side and pull out the other fives, because I quite like that when decks do that. There's a deck called the Cheminée Tarot, something like that. I never have known how to pronounce it. But it does the same thing, where it gives you sort of the solutions to some of the cards in their depictions, and I kind of have the feeling that that's what's happening here with the fives. I really love this as the Four of Staves. Again, there is that sense of, you can read this tradition. They're stopping here, they're celebrating, he's stretched out, they're eating together, they're having this moment here, right? And there's a very structured, stable feel to that with the fours. Here we have the threes, successful conclusion of a journey or project. The ship has come in. Like normally we're seeing the ships out into the water, right, waiting for them to come in. They're unloading the ship in this one. It works quite well. Whereas in the two, right, she's waiting and now everything's come back. We've got, sorry, fireworks for some reason. Somebody's decided now is a appropriate time to let off fireworks. So one. It may come back. I don't know. I tried. But yeah, so you can see the waiting and then everything coming. Just a very clear story progression there. And then a very powerful ace here to go with the ace. More going on in the background, obviously, with the Egyptian cycle here. This is probably an actual place in Japan. It wouldn't surprise me. So it really sets the tone for the place of these ancestral energies that we're looking at. Now, I grew up obsessed with Arthurian legend. It lasted well into my adulthood. So I love that we have this cycle here. So we have, of course, Arthur. I mean, come on, look at him. He's perfect. I love him. We have very interesting Guinevere, right? We have she's a little dreamier, a little sweeter, I suppose. Not that I'm saying that she's a bad person, because she's not, but I don't know. I was kind of surprised. She definitely seems a little more, a little younger and a little bit more innocent, which is probably the case, let's be honest, of the story cycle. Here we have Lancelot looking like he's definitely writing off the cover of a romance novel. I mean, there's no question, but that's Lancelot, right? I love her. Like this card, I saw this card and I was like, oh yes, just for this card. Anyways, we have Morgana here, and I'm going to just read this real quick. It says, a magical being, one who sees via the lens of insight, a healer, especially of the emotions, knowledge of herbs and the mysteries of the earth, a deep intuitive understanding of earth and water energies, in addition, charismatic energy, magnetism, and attraction. I love this picture. I just love that picture. We're starting with the tens, and I mean, come on, it's Camelot. In Camelot, we will not start singing the Camelot song, but it's Camelot, the end of the rainbow. This desire to create equality amongst men, and it really represents the ideals of what we would hope for in society that obviously don't take place all that often, and certainly weren't taking place even in the storyline. But that desire was there. Reaching for that Holy Grail was certainly there. We have the Nine of Cups here, and a celebration here. We have everybody seated at a round table. We have dancers, and there is this idea of plenty here. Everything is as it should be in the Nine of Cups. Beautiful Eight of Cups, very traditional in terms of the going off away from the, I love the different types of cups here. I love that they're not knocked over. It's a pet peeve of mine, just personal preference. I love that they're going to the magic, to the standing stones, which is so powerful here. So I am just a big fan of this in general, right? Is that Merlin here that's going off? Is that Morgana in disguise? Like, we can't really tell. We can wonder. Oh, look at that. power there between the Seven of Cups and what you desire, the strength of what is desired, and grasping for the right things. And you can just feel that sort of kinetic energy there. I think is really powerful. Love this as well. Well, I feel like this is Merlin here. I'm not sure who this young person would be. Six of Cups. And they don't tell you anything. Memories, childhood. Maybe thinking about Merlin, thinking back when he was younger and he could have the ideals and not have to work so hard and strategize and not be as, overwhelmed by knowledge and the things that he knows. So I think that's powerful. Here we have the Five of Cups, which is usually, we can see that sorrow. This is a story, right? And he's so disappointed and he's heartbroken here with this Five of Cups. And how are they going to get past that? So we can really see the story. Now, let me be very fair. Like, we could probably see the story in the other ones. They just weren't stories that I know as well. Where this, you can really see the story. And I look at that Four of Cups. He knows he's kind of this moment here of stillness before everything is going to crash. So dramatic, right? Here we have the Three of Cups. Reconciliation, coming together, commitments, these types of things are what she has. The Two of Cups, powerful union here. And a very beautiful Ace of Cups. Sounds like a whale in the background. The sunset, like that's a very powerful Ace of Cups. Okay, so that brings us to the suit of Sacred Circles, or the Pentacle suit here. So we have Grandfather Thunder, powerful, beautiful image. We have the beautiful Grandmother Moon. Look at how caring and tender she is, and wise. I love the moon cycles and then the actual moon out there. The Prince, and again, he doesn't look overly movement oriented, but I love the light shining in here, and that movement coming from that light pushing away the dark here, which is really interesting. But this is Father Sun with the sun going, and then here we have Mother Earth with these. So in this cycle we have Father Sun, Father Sun is in the sunshine, Mother Earth, Grandmother Moon, and Grandfather Thunder in this particular cycle, which is just beautiful. So again, I don't think these are intended to follow. Oh, I love this Ten of Sacred Circles. That is gorgeous. I mean, just everything is right. The community is the way it needs to be. People are inside and they're warm. Everything is as it should be in the Ten of Pentacles. It's really beautiful. Look at her. She's gorgeous. This is beautiful because we think about the Nine of Pentacles, right, as being that sense of having everything that you need. But in this, it is also related not to wealth, but also to age and the wisdom that comes from age, which I think is gorgeous. And that is just beautiful. Look at her. I love this suit. Eight of Sacred Circles, apprenticeship and learning her craft. Is going to make some of the drums here. Absolutely love the Seven of Sacred Circles. The bounty that you're going to get, that it's going to be worth the patience, right? Here we have the Six of Coins. This is really beautiful. She has this as reciprocation, sharing prosperity, giving or receiving gift. So they've looks like they've hung some things on a tree, whether that is an offering. We do see a lot of footprints coming here, almost like animal tracks. So I don't know if there are things being left out as well for the animals who have given so much to, make the skins and the drums and the clothing and things, and then giving back to that with all of the animal prints that are there. I'm just, that's what it seems like. Here we have the five. Again, the fives interests me greatly. Searching for a direction or purpose in life. Tapping the subconscious for direction. So the five of earth would be that sort of disruption, and not, it is outside, right? They're definitely outside of the communal area and needing to figure out what is their next step. Where do they need to go? I still feel like there's something with the fives sort of answering the quandary of the fives that I quite like. We have the Four of Sacred Circles here. The home environment, that sense of security and stability in the fours. Interesting three. Look at, do you see the bear here? I know this was a story of, let me go back to the beginning. Sorry, I didn't meant to do that. Legend of Bear and Thunder Spirit Ancestors. So we have bear, and this must probably be like a thunder eagle or something. And so it's a tale of a vision quest here. And again, oh, look at that. I love that. Definitely going to read up on this tale. I have read a lot of Native American myths. Again, love the aces here. I feel like I've read the story of Bear and Thunder Spirit, but I will definitely need to refresh that. Okay, I'm going to zoom out real quick. I love that suit. Oh, this from where the box got crunched. This must have been that last card. So you can definitely see it's crunched there. I might contact US Games. They're probably pretty good about replacing those things, just because I know I'm going to love this deck so much. But also, not everything in life is perfect, and that can represent that. 1, 2, 3, 4. I guess I didn't pull all the fives out. Wait, now here's the fives. Here's all the aces. But I do really love the aces. I really love this deck, period. It's a very powerful feeling. Very powerful indeed, and I'm definitely going to spend some time with the fives because I'm liking what's happening there, even though I'm not entirely sure what that is. But I think the important thing with this would be not kind of trying to force it into. You can see, I believe, you can see the hints there of sort of traditional Rider-Waite-Smith in them, so they're not like so far away. But I also do think they're more concerned with the progression of the myth and the number cycle, and I really enjoy that in decks. Now this is obviously a huge deck. I don't believe, I could not riffle shuffle it head to head, so to speak, or however you want to call that. But it riffles really well to the side. This is how I do some larger decks, like my Weaver's Oracle. I shuffle this way as well. I know some people, I believe Ethany, like does the corners like that, and then you get a nice, I know most people don't riffle, so you probably don't care. I do, so I like to have a good, it's a handful. I mean, I have fairly long fingers for a woman, and even trying to overhand shuffle that is not easy. So I actually think you're better off in this case if you are a riffle shuffler. This, I think, is going to make it very unwieldy for people with small hands are going to have a rough time. So I don't see myself doing really large spreads with a deck this size. I see using this more along the way that I do my web reading, where I'm pulling one card and then building a reading around it. Or pulling from, I don't know where I pulled this from, so I'll have to redo it again just to see, but like pulling from a 3 card here with that, and then building something around that, or casting some journey tokens on it, or that type of thing. That's how I would see myself, because it is so large. Like I couldn't do even, let me just see, but I don't think, I actually could, it would come off a little bit, but that's enough to see what's going on. So, you know, I could actually get one of my general readings out of it and onto my table. So that's surprising, actually, that I can actually do that. That's good to see. That I could actually do that. So I'll have to do some bigger readings. They feel, because, I guess because of the size and because of the subject matter, it does feel a little bit more Oracle-like. So I tend to lean towards like 1 and 3 card readings for Oracle. So that tends to be what I think of with this deck at the moment. But again, this is my first impressions. My first impressions are that I think it is, oh, I love that card. Really beautiful. But I do think that because of, I think, how beautifully she did the structure of the minors and the progression of the story, I do think that it's well worth spending some time learning those story cycles, mythological cycles, which is something that I will do next, because you can see so much of that, or I can see so much of that in the Arthurian legend because I know the story, right? I don't see it as much in the others because I don't know the stories as much. And so I would definitely want to familiarize myself with those, because I think that's going to add just a beautiful layer to working with this deck. So that's priority 1 on my list. So I hope that you have enjoyed this. I will try to catch up with you again after using it for a while. I do envision this as being a deck that I use quite a bit, especially for myself, or again in my ancestor readings, my web reading even, although that's really strongly based on the Weaver's Oracle. But that type of reading that I prefer and love to do, that's kind of part of my soul, I can see that this working really well with that, and I think it's beautifully done. So there we have it. I will talk to you all later. It's funny. I'm just kind of popping back on here for a second. I wanted to do a reading for myself, and I was tempted. I was literally thinking to myself that I could easily remove the majors from this deck and simply have it be a minors only, because people do majors only decks. Why couldn't they do minors only decks? Because the minors are just so powerful with those mythological cycles. And so then shuffle, lots of shuffling like this. I was side shuffling it. You saw me side shuffling it. Lots of hand shuffling. And then the way that I split is like this, and so I have 1, 2, and 3 at the bottom, right? And here I have the Moon, the Sun, and Justice, 3 majors cards. So I think that is probably a voice of the deck saying, do not do such a thing, that I will heed. I just wanted to share that. Very powerful first reading. Justice or this Queen of Swords, if those cards show up in first readings, that generally tells me there's some oomph there for me. I'm still going to do a little bit more to this reading, but I just wanted to share that I just want to throw that in there.